Hello again, and here we go now with section 3. We've got section 2 complete with our last 2 rounds of granny stripes, and the blanket is sitting on the front because we're going to be making a round of small squares. These are called the heart squares, and they're made up individually and joined as you're making them. So they're joined with something called simple join as you go. There is a detailed video tutorial on simple join as you go elsewhere in my YouTube channel, but this one is slightly different, so I'm going to do this one specifically for this blanket. We're working with 2 colours. This is the dark purple and the light green, and I'm going to start with this colour. This is a bit tangled now. Everything's really wearing down. We've got not much of all the colours left, but this will be fine. So I'm going to start just in exactly the same way as you made the first 2 rounds of the simple or the plain granny square in the middle. 2, 3, 4. So I'm not going to spend too much time explaining the first 2 rounds. I've made my circle as usual, 1, 2, and then I'm doing 2 trebles, 1, 2, chain 2, and 2 trebles. Sorry, 3 trebles. This is our simple granny square. 3 trebles, chain 2, and 3 trebles. Chain 2 and 3 trebles. Now if you're not sure how to do this, go back to the video tutorial for the plain granny square in section 1, but this is really very straightforward. Chain 2 and slip stitch to the top of the first chain 2. So that's round 1 as you would normally make a granny square. Chain 2 and turn, and we have the complete corner to make this time because our chain 2 is on the extreme right. Straight over into the next corner with 3 trebles. Chain 2 and 3 trebles. Please don't mind me going fast here. I don't want to waste your time as you've already seen how to do this. And I'll just finish round 2 and then I can get started with the joining round, which is round 3. So that's 2 and that's corner. Yep. 2 and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 in the next corner, nearly there, chain 2 and 1, 2, 3. I should have done this beforehand actually. Right, so we've done 2 rounds of our simple square, and I'm going to slip stitch as normal into the corner to close it, chain 2 and turn. Now this is the 3rd round, and in this square here we just went right round with the 3rd round. What I'm going to do with this one though is I'm going to, instead of making a treble stitch, I'm going to make a half treble, which is yarn over, put your hook in, pull up the loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops at once. So it's a slightly smaller stitch than the treble, but of course that's what we used when we did the joins, so you should be fairly clear about that. And another one, so that's our first middle cluster of round 3 done. And then I'm going to make my corner with half trebles, chain 2 and 3 half trebles, and then in the middle 3 half trebles, 1, 2, 3, and then when we get to the next corner I'm only going to do the first half, so that's 1, 2, 3 half trebles. So that's my square at that point, and this is where we're going to start to attach it to the blanket. So it's any corner of the blanket, and I'm just going to lay my square in position so that it's lined up with the corner of the blanket itself. And instead of any chains or anything, all I'm going to do is slip stitch into that corner and then finish off my corner of my square, 1, 2, 3, and then slip stitch into the next space in the blanket, and 1, 2, 3 in the next space on the square, and once more slip stitch into the next space on the blanket, and then 1, 2, 3 in the corner of the square. You can see what it's looking like now. Just be careful that you don't miss any of these spaces, because that's what throws out the count and you get to the end of your row and your square doesn't fit. So make sure that you've gone into the both of these spaces, and then we're done half of the corner and into the next space and slip stitch, and then we can come down the side to finish off the square. 2, 3, and into the middle. So it's very simple. All you're doing is a third round and of the square, and as you're making the round you're slip stitching it into the blanket at the same time. That was 3, chain 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're finished. So we just need to find the top of that first chain 2 and slip stitch, and that's all there is to it. That's our first square joined. Just double check that you've got a slip stitch in each of those 2 spaces, and also just double check again that your blanket's on the front, because you want your joining stitch to always be on the front. So that's square number 1. Square number 2, just slightly different. So what I'm going to do is do my 2 rounds of square number 2, and then I'll come back and show you how I attach them. So this is square number 2 done as far as the first 2 rounds, plus the beginning of round 3 with the half treble stitch, and I've come along from that point where I started in the middle of this side. I've come along and I've gone up as far as this corner. Now instead, when we joined this square, we started joining it to the blanket itself, but we've now got 2 sides to join. We've got the side of this the purple square, also the side of the blanket. So we're actually going to start in this corner here, which is the bottom left corner of the square, and slip stitch into it. And then I'm going to finish off this corner on the green square, and then find the next space on the purple, slip stitch, and the middle space on the green square, and then the next space, and now we're at the corner. And this is where we just differ very slightly, because if I put 1, 2, 3 in of the half trebles, and now instead of just slip stitching into the blanket, we're going to slip stitch into the corner of the purple square, so that's this corner here, and into the space in the blanket. And don't be tempted to go into this space, which is the next one along, because that's not where you want to go. you want to actually share this same space here that the purple is in. And the reason I slip stitch into the purple square as well as into the blanket is just to hold it a bit securely. I'm going to do it just into the blanket at the moment, and just to let you see. So there are 2 slip stitches, and there's a tendency for these 2 slip stitches to pull apart. So I'm going to just give it belt and braces to keep it secure. Just make sure I get that in. So I'm going to find the corner of the square first and slip stitch into it, and then slip stitch into the blanket. And then I can come back and finish off my corner of my green square. And that just helps to keep these squares tucked neatly together so that they don't pull apart. Slip stitch in here, half treble 3, slip stitch, and so on. And then this time, when you come round the corner and down, once you've completed this corner, you are right back where you started, because we had 2 sides to attach. So I'm going to just do that very quickly. So that's slip stitch and 3 half trebles, 1, 2, 3, and slip stitch. I've pulled up my yarn there, I'll put that back, slip stitch, and into this corner with 3 half trebles, 1, 2, 3, and there you can see what it looks like. I'm going to slip stitch into the next space and finish off my corner. You can swing it round so that it's at the right angle for you for working. And I've finished off this corner, and you can see that I'm right back at this point, so all I need to do is slip stitch. So that's what your first 2 squares look like. Now the difference between the simple join as you go and the continuous join as you go, which is in this part here, is that the squares are not, there's no interruption between the squares, which I quite like in this particular round. They're just a square and another square, whereas in the middle it's almost like they've got a border around them. So there are no borders around the squares in this part. And you're also thinking, why are they called heart squares? Well, I'll be back to show you what that means, but I decided, because these were very small squares, I wanted the hearts to sit on top of them. I thought that if I tried to put a heart, crocheted it inside the square as part of the square, it would just not really work. So my hearts are made separately and sewn on just the same way as we sewed on the sugar plums. So I'll show you that, and I'm also going to show you what happens when we get to this end, because in this round we're not going to go round the corner, we're going to stop and then start the second side. So I'll be back to show you how that works. Now, as you'll know from the pattern, you have a number of these little hearts to make now. They're very cute and very easy to do. And that's my tutorial for today, is how to make one of these little hearts. Now, the pattern will explain which colours to use and how many to make. We're just going to make one today. A couple of things to mention before I start. I don't use the magic ring method, and that I know is something that a lot of you will prefer, especially if you do amigurumi. And of course, you can start with a magic ring, but my preference is to start with a chain 4 and slip stitch into the first chain to make the ring. Now we've done that right through the pattern so far, and honestly I don't think that you can pull that center hole any tighter if you were doing a magic ring. That's I've made up my center in this one and just woven in the end as normal, and it's made a really tight finish to the middle. The other thing is that when you finish, give yourself a long tail. When you cut your yarn with the last tail that you cut, make it a long one, because this is what you'll be threading onto your needle to sew the heart down, and you'll be attaching it in the same way that I showed you how to do the sugar plums. Okay, so to start, you want to put your slip knot onto your hook as usual and chain 4, 2, 3, 4, and then slip stitch into the first chain to form a circle with a hole in the middle, and you're going to be working all your stitches into the space in the middle. It's difficult to see at this point, but it opens up as you're working. Chain 2, like that, and then we're going to start a group of 3 double treble stitches. So for double treble, you want to wrap your yarn twice around the hook and then go into the middle space, pick up your yarn and bring it through so that you've got 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and make sure I get them all, and yarn over and pull through 2. That's a nice tall stitch. It's a double treble. Now we've got 3 to do, so another one, and a third, and that makes the widest part of one side of the heart. So we've made a start, and then we've now got a group of 3 treble stitches. So that's just yarn over once, in, pull up your loop, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2, and you need to do 3 of those. Chain 1, and then we're going to put in 1 more double treble, twice around the hook, in, pull up your yarn, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, chain 1, 3 trebles to go up the other side. So we're just repeating what we've done. 1, 2, and 3, and you'll have guessed it, 3 double trebles. 1, 2, and 3. Now remember, you started with a chain 2, so we're going to do that to balance this side, and then you want to bring your hook right into that middle space, pull up your yarn and slip stitch. So you're just going to pull it straight through that loop that's on the hook, and that's your heart. Obviously we need to pull in the center, and we want to finish this off, and to do that just pull your yarn through and cut it, leaving a tail, and give it a really good tug. And there's your heart. Now it's got a big hole in the middle, so that needs to get pulled tight. And you want to weave that in. I don't think I've got my needle to hand. It's gone missing, so I'll just leave you to do that. Just pull it nice and tight, and then as you weave it round, it will tighten it even more. And there we go. That's your heart ready to sew down. So it's just like this one with the tight center. So you can go ahead and make up all the hearts that you need to do for this section and in the colors according to the pattern, and I'll see you in the next video.